Welcome to the final day of the Opera Euro Rapid. This is between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. On day 1 of the final, it was 2-2, 1 win each. Now it's day 2. It all ends today. In this video, I'm going to show you 2 very exciting games. If you're new here, hello, my name is William. I make chess videos, and in this one, we're going to go through the Opera Euro Rapid final. The first game we're going to look at is between Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. Wesley has white. Then the next one, it'll be Magnus having white. First up, day 2, game 1. Let's begin. e4, c5. We have the Sicilian, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, the Rossolimo Sicilian, e6 castle, knight ge7. The point of this move is so then the knights defend each other. c3, controlling central square, d4, a6, kick the bishop away, but Wesley chooses to retreat it to a4, so then it can come to c2 to defend this pawn. b5, bishop back to c2, bishop b7, rook e1. White is ready to play d4 to get the full centre. Black can actually counter with d5, get the knight out of the way. Rook c8. Notice in this game, Magnus has actually developed his queen side first. His king is still in the middle. a4, opening up the a file potentially for the rook, so Carlsen just shuts it down with b4. d4, getting the centre. Take, knight g6. Once the knight gets out of the way, then the bishop can come out. Then black can castle. It's not so bad white has the centre because black can strike with d5, or you might play d6, knight d2. This knight can come to b3 or to c4. That's why Magnus now played knight a5 to stop that. g3, you've got to be careful when you push pawns in front of your king, but this move is very useful because it controls these 2 squares, so then the knight cannot actually come in. Bishop e7, one idea was actually to play bishop d6. Maybe you don't actually mind white pushing forward because you can go back and then play d6 trying to attack the pawn structure. Bishop e7 played by Magnus, h4, planning to get h5 to kick the knight away. Magnus now goes crazy. He sacrifices his bishop because he believes in his kingside attacking chances. Sacrificing a bishop for 2 pawns. Take, knight takes. Take, rook e3, providing 3rd rank defense. f5. Giving black the chance to open up this diagonal. We can always blunder mate in 1. Queen h1 is mate. This is Carlsen's idea. So after f5, rook g3 played. Putting a rook in front of the king. Normally you have a knight or bishop in front of the king, but Wesley actually swings his rook over. To e1, to e3, to g3, and at the same time attacks the pawn on g7. Magnus castles. Knight f3 attacking the queen. Queen h5. And in this kind of position, I don't really think black has any attack, even though he's going to get 2 or 3 pawns for the piece. Knight e5, offering a queen trade. Queen doesn't have a good square. If it goes here, then knight takes d7. The queens come off. Then Magnus actually manages to get a central pawn. Queen takes queen, bishop takes. Knight takes d7 is threatened, so Magnus plays d6, attacking the knight. The knight drops back. Attacking this pawn. There's central tension here. So Carlsen takes in the center. Knight takes b4. Knight c4 coming in. a5, really cool move because it actually stops Wesley moving his knight back. Another option was just to play b3 and after this then a5. But maybe Carlsen actually gets his knight in the center and Wesley didn't want that. So you play a5 first. Really cool move. d5. When you play a move like this, even though you're defending your central pawn, this bishop is out of the game. It's just a big pawn. d5. This is looking really, really good for white. Bishop g4. This bishop exists. This bishop doesn't. Rook f6. Magnus chooses to defend from the side, but this doesn't work. Another option was to play this rook. But he went rook f6. And this is a losing move because now the bishop sliced the board. Bishop g5. This rook is running out of squares. If the rook moves to g6, then bishop h5. The bishops totally slice the board. And it's game over. Take, he resigned. Magnus is actually a rook down. Game over. Game 2 and game 3 were drawn today, so now we go straight to game 4. Magnus has to win this game, or else Wesley will be the winner of the Opera Rapid. Let's go straight to that game. Let's flip the board round from Wesley's perspective. Magnus has white, Wesley has black. The game began. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. We have the Italian. Knight f6, d3, bishop c5. It's a good spot to put your bishops on these two squares because you're attacking the f2 and the f7 pawn. c3, controlling a central square, the d4 square. Castle, castle, d6. At the moment, it's really about fighting for control of that square. Rook e1, put a rook near the center. a5, controlling that square as well. Bishop g5, pinning the knight to the queen. h6, chase it away. Carlsen maintains the pressure with bishop h4. g5, this is super risky, pushing the pawns in front of your king, but Wesley knows what he's doing. Bishop back. Now one option is actually just to go king g7, then maybe the knight moves, and then f5. But Wesley just tucks his bishop back to b6, just to avoid any d4 ideas. So then the d4 hits the bishop. It just gets out the way anyway. Knight a3. This move is possible in this line when this pawn isn't here. So then knight could come to b5. Knight h7. Knight retreat, so then it defends this pawn, but maybe f5 is an idea. Black might be the one who's trying to get an attack on the king side. Knight c2, coming around. Coming into the central squares, this could be very dangerous. Wesley has to act fast because there's some really weak squares. I mean, these central squares belong to white. h5, going for a kingside attack. h3, giving your bishop room. h4, bishop retreats. g4, attacking the knight. Take, take. Bishop pins knight to the queen. d4, striking in the center. Notice Wesley has marched his pawns on the king side, but now Magnus strikes in the center, creating a lot of tension. Wesley now resolves that tension. He takes in the center. Knight takes d4, so that's why we can see this knight journey was useful. Knight a3 to c2, now it takes the pawn on d4. Take, take. Bishops are slicing the board. This bishop attacks this pawn. This bishop stops this knight moving. Wesley puts more pressure with knight g5. But Magnus gets out of the way with queen d3. Knight takes f3 check. Take, bishop h5. Keeping an eye on this pawn, and maybe coming back to g6. e5. Just want to show you this cool trap. If bishop g6, this loses on the spot because queen takes g6 check. We're using the pin on this diagonal. You just drop a bishop. So that's why e5 was played by Magnus. Also, if you take, then this bishop can come in the game. d5, shutting out that bishop. But Magnus has a plan to reroute this bishop to b3. a4, kick the bishop away. Bishop back to d1. There was an absolutely brilliant move here with king h1, which was mentioned in the interview. The point is after take, you go rook g1 check. Game over. And then bishop g6, you can take. Check. And then e6. All of a sudden, the bishop now comes in the game. Now, if you take the bishop, rook g1 check, you might think, well, get the king out of the way. But then it's still the same move. e6, the bishop comes in. If f6, queen f5, attacking this bishop. If you defend, then there's an absolutely brilliant move here. Bishop e5. Oh, man. In the interview afterwards, Magnus said that he should have trusted his instincts. Put the king to the side, put the king on h1, then the rook and the queen just come in. Bishop e5 is totally game over. If you take, then check. And if the king moves, that is mate. Incredible variation missed by Magnus, but in the game he chose to retreat the bishop, the normal human move. By the way, you don't go here, because then bishop g6, and these bishops come off. Magnus wants to keep this piece on, so he chooses to put it all the way back for now, to d1. For now, it's doing a good job defending this pawn. Maybe that bishop can come back in the game. Queen g5, check. King h1. If it's white's move again, he just wins on the spot. Rook g1. But bishop g6, attacking the queen, and it blocks the rook attacking the king. Queen e2, bishop takes d4, so Magnus gives up a pawn. This bishop is so strong attacking this pawn, and it's got really strong diagonal pressure. Rook g1 attacking the queen gets out of the way, putting pressure on this pawn, keeping an eye on this pawn as well. Queen d2, queen sidesteps, attacking the bishop, and this bishop defends this pawn. c5, Wesley defends his bishop. This amazing bishop right in the center. f4, bishop attacks queen, queen goes back to h6, stopping this pawn moving. Rook g5, blocking the path and threatening f5. But Wesley now plays a brilliant move to break up the structure, f6, putting a question to the rook. Take, now the bishop comes back. It looks really cool. Normally, you would expect 3 pawns and a knight, or 3 pawns and a bishop in front of your king. This time, in this kind of position, Wesley actually has no pawns in front of his king, and A queen with 2 bishops. Bishop needs to take back, so then it attacks the rook. This gives Magnus a chance to play queen takes d5 check, but the king just sidesteps. It's perfectly safe on this diagonal. There is no check for white, because on this diagonal it's totally covered. Bishop f3. Magnus decides to sacrifice a rook. Because if rook g2, then a3 is just so powerful. Wesley is just going to totally destroy the right side of the board, the queen side. So he chooses to sacrifice the exchange, rook for bishop, but he gets his bishop in the game. a3. Wesley doesn't even take this rook yet because he uses the power on this diagonal. And a3 is an absolutely amazing move. Rook g1, taking on b2. Really cool, because rook g1, both rooks attack the bishop. But Wesley ignores it. That's how well he's played in this game. He takes on b2. Magnus grabs the bishop, but this pawn is there for a reason. Rook takes bishop. Take, then you get a queen back. Queen d1 check. Attacking king and rook. That's why white has to move the rook back. Then the queen comes all the way back. Check out this journey. The pawn went to a3, take on b2, get a queen, and then all the way back in the defense. Black is totally safe. By the way, look at this bishop. Absolutely dead. Blocked in by his pawn. White really doesn't want that pawn on f4 to exist. f5. That's why Magnus tries to get that bishop in the game. Rook g8. Competing for control over the file. Magnus is losing. He's got a rook for a bishop, so he tries to keep it. But Wesley has 2 rooks, so he uses both. Rook e8, competing for this e-file as well. Rook e6. But it doesn't matter, because after take with the queen, queen h6. Getting the queen slowly back in the game. Queen can come here, and actually queen c1 is checkmate. So bishop d1 blocking it. Queen g5, threatening another checkmate. Queen e4, retreating the queen, stopping this. Queen d2, double attack. Attacking pawn and bishop. Bishop moves out. At the same time, you block the power of the rook. You block the file. Queen back to g5. f3, holding. That pawn defends the bishop. So it looks like black can't find a way in at the moment on this file. Queen c1, check, because he goes the other way. King g2, check. Wesley doesn't actually want that pawn to exist. When that pawn is gone, maybe the queen can come back to give checks along the h-file. What a great move. Queen h6, check. King g3, rook d8. Lots of arrows here, let me try to explain. When the rook comes to this square, the rook can come to d8, attacking this bishop. At the same time, this queen and bishop work well together because they control so many dark squares. Maybe the queen can go to h4 to give a check. By the way, look at all of black's pieces. Everything is on a dark square. There's total harmony among all the black pieces. They all defend each other and black's winning. Bishop h3, so Magnus, he's just blocking the h-file. Check. Bishop dead. Bishop g4, queen h6. Remember, Magnus has to win this game because he's down 1-0 in this match. So he's got to play on bishop retreats to g1. Maybe the bishop can come to e3 back in the game. But Wesley throws in a check. Queen h4 check. King g2. I mentioned this before. Really cool to see every single piece, except this guy, is on the dark square. Rook d2 check. This is looking so dangerous. King f1 check. King g2 check. And there's no way for white to escape the checks. Wesley is perfectly happy with a draw because if he gets it, he wins the match today. And there's no good way out of these perpetual checks. That's it. You can't block because you just take. So you're totally losing. And if you go back, check, you can't go here because you lose. Well, actually, even better, you just go there. Queen e1, actually even better. Queen e1 is mate. If this was a normal game, Wesley So would play on against anyone, and he would win this position. But he only needs a draw, and he is the winner of the Opera Euro Rapid. Winning the match today, 2.5, 1.5. Here are the final standings for the Opera final. Wesley So is the winner. Magnus Carlsen came second. In the other match, Timur Rajabov beat MVL, so he comes in 3rd place, and MVL is in 4th place. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it valuable. If you did, why not give it a like and subscribe to the channel at the same time? If you press the bell, that means YouTube will let you know when I release a new video. Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed the coverage of the Opera Euro Rapid.